Don't let the gifts God gave you lead you away from God. Now, let me say that again. Don't let the gifts God gave you lead you away from God. Now, you can ask, how can God's gifts lead someone away from him? Well, essentially, it happens when we turn his gifts into our possessions, or we wind up misusing them. There are many ways people do this, and I'm just going to give you two examples. The first one is a little girl's Christmas story, and then a clergyman's Ascension Day sermon. Several years ago, a friend in New York told me this story about his 4-year-old granddaughter. Early Christmas morning, he and his wife dropped off her first bike at the little girl's house. They then sat in their car outside in front of the house because the family had arranged to signal him when to call his granddaughter and impersonate Santa Claus over the phone. When he called, her mother had to pull her away from unwrapping all the gifts and presents that she had received in order to speak with Santa Claus. Now, Santa asked if she liked everything he gave her. Well, of course she was thrilled, especially with her first bicycle. She was already getting on it and told him about how she was going to learn to ride it down to her friend's house. Santa ended the call by saying he was tired from delivering gifts and was going to go to sleep. After hanging up and returning to unwrapping her remaining presents, I was told she jumped up, frantically called to her mom. Wait, call him back, call him back. My friend was at the front door preparing to come in when he got a call from her mom saying his granddaughter needed to speak to Santa. So in his Santa voice, he asked if there was a problem. She said, I know you're tired, but I forgot to thank you. Santa choked up. As adults, we too get distracted by the material gifts we are given. Our lives can easily become centered around all the activities and possessions that divert our attention away from God and what he has called us to do with the gifts he has given us. As proof of that, just look at church attendance, a place where, like the little girl, we all can come and admit, I forgot to thank you. Now, God's material gifts can lead us away from him unless we follow Peter's advice from today's epistle. Keep our minds clear, control our actions, and watch unto prayer. The second story is about a sermon delivered on Ascension Day 2024, a year ago, at the Westminster Abbey in London, England. If you were there, you would have heard the clergyman read the Ascension Day epistle from the first chapter of Acts. It goes, and when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. He began his sermon this way. Literally, do you suppose? Referring to Jesus being taken up into a cloud. Well, some would seem to think so. He goes on. Go to the Mount of Ascension today on the outskirts of Bethany, and you may be shown a rock with marks in it that could just be taken for footprints. The last footprints of Jesus, the guide will tell you with unconvincing assurance. Or go to the shrine at Walsingham in Norfolk. At the far end of the church, there's a little chapel of the Ascension with a pair of plaster feet sticking through the ceiling and disappearing into a painted cloud. He goes on to say, the trouble with such primitive pictures of a literally sky-born Jesus is that they can diminish an important truth. For the truth that Luke is urging on us in symbolic language tonight is about the sovereignty and the authority of Jesus, whom the disciples had known in the flesh, but now acknowledge as their Lord, no longer limited by time and space. That experience demanded of them, as it demands of us now, a new way of thinking. Recall what Peter said in our epistle today. As every man hath received the gift, even so minister the same one to another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. Think about it. What gifts had this clergyman received so he can be a good steward of the manifold grace of God? He received the Bible, the words of the early church fathers, the lives of the saints, the sacrifices of the martyrs, and even a 700-year-old pulpit from which to preach. Yet, he preaches at the description of Jesus' ascension by Luke really just symbolic language. How or even whether Jesus ascended to the Father, he appears neither to know or even to care. What this minister of God asks us and his parishioners is to follow him into a new way of thinking. It is not the Bible and the other God-given gifts I listed earlier that are leading him away from God. It is through the misuse of the gifts of intelligence, of knowledge, and of discernment that he has eased God out. We are all susceptible to this affliction. Don't let the gifts of God lead you away from God. In the name of the Father, and of the Son,